this is another fun-filled storytime video because my life is endlessly bizarre. This one is about the time that my neighbors were armed bank robbers. Isn't that fun? So this was in 2011. It was right after I had my tumor surgery, and it was when I was supposed to still be on bed rest, but was kind of playing fast and loose with that. So we were in Vacaville, California, which is kind of like halfway between San Francisco and Sacramento, maybe a little bit closer to Sacramento. And we were living in an apartment complex that was actually really nice. It was pretty close to the freeway, fairly new construction, and it was pretty upscale. Like, we had to do our background checks to get in there. We thought it was a nice place to live. Gated community, had a password to get in the gate, had guards, security, all that stuff. So one morning, my husband went to get in his car to go to work and realized that his car had a big scrape up one side of it. And the car next to his car was missing its passenger mirror, which was on the ground behind Mike's car, and that car's paint was all over his car. So it's pretty clear what had happened there, that car had hit his. So he stood around for a while and was like, dude, what the hell? Someone hit my car. He came in, he told me about it, then he called the police and waited for them to show up, which always takes forever because there's always more high priority stuff going on in that area. So as he's waiting, he's sitting on the curb, he sees this dude walk out to go get in that car. He gets close to it, he sees Mike, he kind of looks at the car, kind of walks away, then he comes back and still seems like he's gonna get in the car. Mike was like, dude, is that your car? You hit my car. Obviously, your mirror's on the ground behind my car. And the guy was like, oh no, it's my girl's car. And he's like, okay, well, who was driving it? And I guess like the guy gave him some BS excuse and then disappeared back into his apartment, which was right by ours. And Mike was sitting there waiting for the cops for about half an hour. Eventually this cop shows up, and right around the time the cop shows up, that kid comes back. And the guy must have been maybe like 19 years old. He looked really young. So Mike is explaining the whole situation to the cop. The cop is like, okay, yeah, it's pretty clear what happened here. I'm gonna have to talk to them, or the owners of the car, and we'll work something out. So everything seems like it's getting sorted out just fine, and I walked out to bring Mike some water because it was hot. He was standing outside for a really long time dealing with all this. And right around this time, the other guy is giving his statement to the police officer. And it was really unusual the way they were doing these things. They had everyone just standing all together giving all this information, and usually cops will kind of like divide people up and get their stories individually and proceed from there. I don't really know what the problem was with this particular officer and his partner, but they weren't really doing things by the book. So they start to take this guy's information, and he gives the name of the owner of the car, and he's like, Danielle such and such. And I recognize that name. I grew up in Gilroy, California. Mike grew up in Morgan Hill, California, which is just a few minutes up Highway 101. And eventually I ended up moving to Morgan Hill. We lived there together for a few years, and then we moved to Vacaville so Mike could go to school at UC Davis. And I knew this girl because she had joined an organization I was involved with, and she had had a really troubled childhood. She was a foster kid, which really sucks most of the time. Like, the majority of the time, you're in for a really, really rough start if you're in the foster system. And I had never really been close with Danielle because by the time she was in this organization, I had already aged out. I was working a lot, I was traveling a lot, I wasn't really around. But she had gotten very close to the younger sister of a very close friend of mine, also from the organization. So I was really super close with this friend of mine. I was close with their whole family. I was pretty close with her younger sister. Let's call her Elizabeth. And Elizabeth had recently kind of gone off the rails from what I knew. And at the time was in Las Vegas, and the two of them, Danielle and Elizabeth, I had known had been running with a really rough crowd. Guys who were wanted for, as far as I was told, weapons and possibly pimping and a whole bunch of unsavory stuff. Elizabeth, the last I heard, had been dating her pimp and they were in Las Vegas, and Danielle, I'm pretty sure, had skipped out on some kind of testing that you have to do after you've been arrested for prostitution. So she hadn't done that. I knew that they were at least looking for her for that. There was a warrant there, some kind of situation. And I had another close friend who was working for the DA's office in Santa Clara County. So Vacaville is pretty far away from Gilroy and Morgan Hill, where Mike and I grew up, which is in Santa Clara County. If you're familiar with where Silicon Valley is, that's where we grew up. That's Santa Clara County area. Pretty far. It's like 2.5, maybe 3 hours. So at this time, a close friend of mine who was an adult in this situation and I had been trying to convince Elizabeth to come home. We had been getting her bus tickets, we had been trying to coax her out of that crappy situation, just get her home, help her get her life together, get back in school, stop turning tricks. You know, good stuff. Her family was completely in denial that any of this was happening. Completely 100% in denial. And Elizabeth herself had already admitted to us that all this stuff was happening, but she wasn't willing to come home. So my main concern at the beginning of this was, oh my God, it's Danielle. She knows where Elizabeth is. Maybe I can get the two of them to go back to Gilroy, Morgan Hill area, get back on their feet, get real jobs, safe stuff like that. And so I called my friend in the DA's office, and she asked me if I knew who this kid was, who was supposedly Danielle's boyfriend. I gave her the name, Jordan such and such, and then it just kind of spiraled from there. She said, oh, okay, yes, that's who I thought it was. He is wanted in connection with those 10 armed bank robberies in your area, which I had heard about, but for some odd reason, I just hadn't made the connection that that was that Jordan that they were looking for the 10 full takeover armed bank robberies that were all in my area. Yeah, weird. Really weird. Supposedly, these bank robberies were like the #1 priority for Vacaville Police Department, so I'm not really sure how, when this kid gave his statement and gave his name and gave Danielle's name, the cop wasn't like, oh, hold on 1 second, and then call for backup and arrest his ass. I don't know how that happened, but you know, we all make mistakes, I guess. So that was annoying. While I was on the phone with this woman in Santa Clara County, they were still taking all of this information from this kid, and they were getting the names, for whatever reason, of people who lived in the apartment that he was staying in. So my friend at the DA's office is filling me in on all this stuff inside, and I'm freaking out a little bit. Gives me all this information, asks me to have Vacaville PD contact them at the DA's office in Santa Clara County so they can coordinate this whole thing and pick these guys up, I guess. So I went back outside and I was trying to get one of the police officers there to actually come aside with me and talk to me about the situation. And he refused to do that. I don't know what happened here, but it turned into like a black cop versus white people situation. So one of the cops was white, his partner was black, and the black cop, for whatever reason, decided to be a total douche lord to us. Not sure if it's because Jordan was black or what that situation was, but he kept bringing up race, and it was really awkward and totally irrelevant and not helpful at all. But the more that I insisted that I needed to talk to him about the situation privately, the more he kept insisting that anything that I had to say to him, I could say in front of Jordan. So Mike doesn't even know the whole situation because I haven't had a chance to pull him inside and tell him everything that's happening. He's all hot about his car, and he's trying to figure out how he's gonna get his car fixed. So he's like, all right, so who's gonna fix my car? I need you to make sure that this statement is very clear so that I can make sure that they are paying for the repairs. And the black cop, of course, got all up in his face, and he's like, you're acting really high and mighty over this situation, and we're trying to give you a solution. The solution that they were offering for this situation was that Jordan's buddy Sylvester, who was around the corner working on his car in the parking lot, which was against the complex rules technically, was gonna fix Mike's car for him. And he seems like a nice young man. Are we in some kind of alternate reality? Also, no, he's not a nice young man. Thinking in the back of my mind, that dude is wanted for arms trafficking. So I kept calling my friend at the DA's office trying to explain the situation. Then I went inside and tried to call someone at Vacaville PD to be like, hey, you need to send backup to deal with this situation because the cops you've got out here are not doing what they need to be. I couldn't get anyone from Vacaville PD to return my phone calls. Those dudes left eventually with their statement. I filled Mike in on the situation. He started to freak out. You'd think if you left a voicemail at a police department about someone who was that department's #1 priority, they might, return your call. I don't know. We never actually got a phone call back from Vacaville PD about this situation while it was happening. They just never called back. It was ridiculous. So later on that evening, it took a couple of hours. We were sort of like waiting to see if Vacaville PD would actually contact us. Didn't happen. And then eventually I got a call from a Sergeant Dempsey who had connections with the Santa Clara County DA's office, but I think he was from San Francisco. And he was like, so Vacaville PD is like non-communicative. Here's what I need you to get for me. He's like, I need license plate numbers, I need vehicle descriptions, I need you to watch their apartment and see if you can recognize anyone who comes in or out of the building, get me the apartment number, all this stuff. I'm freaking out. I'm supposed to be on bed rest. I just had a tumor cut out of me. I'm dealing with PTSD. I only have one adrenal gland. I'm like freaking out. I stayed up all night. And the first thing I did was go get photos of their vehicle, all stealthy like, and then I hid in the bushes for a little while and watched their apartment. I figured out what the apartment number was. I got descriptions and whenever possible got photos of people who were coming in and out of the apartment. I got a photo of the car that other guy had been working on. All this information that is absolutely 100% not a regular citizen's responsibility to get for any cop ever, much less in that situation. Knowing full well that these people are wanted for some like pretty gnarly stuff. So I got all of this information. I was like emailing back and forth with Sergeant Dempsey. He's like, all right, I've got everything coordinated. We're gonna send some guys out there tonight from San Francisco. They're gonna pick them up. Just make sure you don't go outside while this is going down. So I sat in a chair in the living room and watched all freaking night. And I think around like 6 a.m. or something, Danielle and Jordan got up to like go take a run or go to the gym or something. They looked like they were wearing gym clothes. And there was an entire SWAT team there. So overnight I had watched this SWAT team kind of like roll into place. And then when they went out for their morning run, they got arrested. It was this big old story in Vacaville. It was in all the newspapers. Everyone at the apartment complex was like, did you hear about what happened? Yeah, I kind of heard a little bit. So that was interesting. I eventually, like a week later, got a call from someone at Vacaville PD apologizing profusely for the situation and the incompetence of the officers who were there. I do know that the one cop who like got all weird about race ended up being subject to disciplinary action. Don't really know what that meant. Kind of wished he was just flat out fired because that was bullshit. And I don't know what happened to the other cop. Pretty sure he was disciplined too. And then I think like a month later, they had like this ceremony, and they gave me and another guy who had actually seen their vehicle at the scene of one of the bank robberies citizen commendation awards, and we split the $10,000 reward, which was cool because I had a lot of medical bills. So I put my $5,000 all on my tumor surgery medical stuff. It was good. It's exactly what every 23-year-old wants to spend $5,000 on. So now I have a Citizen Commendation Award from Vacaville PD. I don't actually know where I put it. I think it's in a box in a closet. I had it hanging next to the toilet in Vacaville before we moved, but it's been in a box ever since we moved away from Vacaville, and yeah, I don't like to remember living in Vacaville. Also, it's called Vacaville. Really? So I think that's the whole story. It's been a lot of years since then, so I probably forgot a lot of details, but that's it in a nutshell. Thanks for watching. If you want to see more storytime videos like this one, let me know in the comments below, and if you enjoyed this video, please click that like button. It really helps my videos get seen.